if I were to ask you right now what you want most in life, you would probably, well, you'd probably give me an answer that is practically universal,
Oh, absolutely.
right? You'd take a breath, maybe smile a little, and just say, I just want to be happy. And, I mean, it sounds entirely reasonable. After all, who on earth would actively choose sadness?
Nobody. I mean, it's the most intuitive desire we have.
Exactly. But today, we are going to look at the quiet, almost invisible mystery that's kind of hidden inside that very wish. We're doing a deep dive today into a really fascinating dialogue between two philosophical thinkers, Nick and Maya, who completely deconstructs this modern obsession with happiness.
Yeah, and they do it alongside some incredible historical research from the psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, which just adds so much weight to the whole discussion.
It really does. So the mission for our deep dive today is to try and answer one massive question. If happiness alone is truly enough to sustain us, why do so many people who achieve literally everything they ever wanted, wealth, fame, absolute comfort, why do they still end up feeling like something fundamental is missing?
And, on the flip side, why do some people who face daily grinding struggles wake up each morning with an immense sense of purpose?
Yeah, it is arguably the most profound contradiction of the human experience.
It really is. And Nick and Maya's dialogue, it forces us to look in the mirror and ask whether we have been aiming at the completely wrong target this whole time. Because if you look at the data, aiming directly at happiness often guarantees you will miss it.
Which is just wild to think about.
Yeah, it is. So we are going to examine this not just as like an abstract philosophy, but through the hard science of evolutionary biology, neuroscience, and psychology. We need to understand the mechanical reality of how our brains actually process these concepts.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because I think we tend to treat happiness like it is a permanent destination,
Mm-hmm.
We treat it like a piece of prime real estate. We think, if I just get that promotion, or if I just buy that house or find that perfect partner, I'm going to move into the happiness house.
Right, like you've arrived.
Exactly. You're going to lock the front door, and I am going to live there forever. But the sources today suggest we have completely misunderstood the biological real estate of our own minds. I mean, we are basically trying to buy a house that cannot physically be bought.
The biology literally forbids it. Nature simply did not design the human brain for a state of permanent bliss.
Wait, really? Nature actually forbids it?
Oh, absolutely. If happiness is the ultimate goal, we have to look at the machinery we are using to pursue it. Our brains are rigorously optimized for survival, not for constant joy.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, just think about the evolutionary environment of our ancestors. If an early human found a bush full of berries, ate a few, and then just entered a state of permanent blissful contentment.
You just sit there.
Right. They would have sat under a tree and eventually starved. Or, they would have been so relaxed they wouldn't have noticed a predator approaching. Constant happiness would make a species highly vulnerable.
Oh, wow. And incapable of growth, I guess.
Exactly. Nature needed us to be slightly restless. Always searching, always striving.
Which, I mean, that sounds a bit pessimistic at first.
Yeah.
You're basically saying we are biologically doomed to be unsatisfied.
Well, doomed is a strong word, but yes, unsatisfied by design.
But when you think about the mechanics of it, it makes perfect survival sense. We are built to adapt, not to rest.
And neuroscience confirms this through the dopamine system. Dopamine is endlessly misrepresented in popular culture as this, reward chemical.
Right, the thing that floods your brain and makes you feel profoundly satisfied when you achieve a goal.
Yes, but the mechanism operates entirely differently. Dopamine fires primarily for anticipation. It is the chemical of pursuit.
Oh, fascinating.
It rewards the state of wanting something, of being on the hunt. The highest spike in dopamine occurs right before you get the reward, not after you possess it. Evolution basically weaponized our neurochemistry to keep us moving forward.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that totally explains the letdown we so often feel after achieving a major goal.
Oh, the post-achievement slump.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The dopamine system is cheering us on while we are running the marathon, giving us all this energy and drive. But the second we cross the finish line...
The dopamine plummets?
Exactly. The brain just packs up its bags and says, great, we have this now. What's next?
Psychologists call that mechanism hedonic adaptation. Your brain has a baseline level of happiness. So when something wonderful happens, say, you get that massive promotion, your brain experiences a temporary spike in positive emotion.
Right, you're thrilled for a bit.
But very quickly, neurological downregulation kicks in. Your brain recalibrates. That extraordinary new job just becomes your normal Tuesday morning routine.
Or the shiny new house just becomes the place where you do your laundry.
Exactly. The finish line is continually pushed further out. Your baseline of expectations just resets to encompass your new reality.
So it's kind of like the weather. I mean, think of happiness like the weather. It visits, it stays for a while, it might be beautiful and sunny, but then it inevitably leaves.
That's a great way to put it.
The clouds roll in, the temperature drops. That's just atmospheric reality.
Mhm.
If you build your entire life around trying to catch and hold on to those pleasant feelings, you are leaving yourself entirely at the mercy of transient brain chemistry.
Yeah.
You are basically trying to control the weather.
Which is a recipe for perpetual psychological frustration. Because if happiness is scientifically guaranteed to fade, if our biology mandates that we will adapt to whatever good fortune comes our way, then the critical question emerges.
What remains when the weather turns bad?
Exactly. When the dopamine retreats, what keeps a person moving forward through the storm?
And that brings us to the crucial distinction that Nick and Maya debate so heavily in their dialogue. The distinction between happiness and meaning.
It's such an important pivot in their conversation.
It is. They argue that these two concepts operate on completely different circuits. Happiness asks a very immediate short-term question, like, how do I feel right now in this exact moment?
Right.
But meaning asks a much deeper, longer-term question, which is, why does this matter?
And that contrast between how do I feel and why does this matter, that is the entire key to surviving the transience of human emotion. You see this everywhere in daily life when you start looking for it.
Oh, absolutely.
Consider a parent caring for a newborn child.
Oh, this is the perfect test case. Let's look at this. Imagine a new parent at 3 in the morning. They haven't slept more than 2 hours in 4 days.
Total sleep deprivation.
Right. There is immense physical depletion, frustration, maybe the baby is screaming, the house is a mess. If you stop that parent in that specific moment and ask, how do you feel right now? Are you experiencing joy?
The answer is a resounding no.
Exactly. They are deeply uncomfortable.
The moment-to-moment experience is actively unpleasant. Yet, despite the exhaustion, if you ask parents about that period later on, many describe it as the most deeply meaningful time of their entire lives.
Which seems paradoxical.
It does. But why is that? It's because the purpose of storing a new life, nurturing the next generation, is infinitely larger than the temporary physiological state of being tired.
You see the exact same architecture in a scientist, too. Like someone spending 20 years in a lab.
Oh, definitely.
We are talking about decades of failure, grant rejections, experiments collapsing, tedious, painstaking work that yields absolutely nothing for years.
Right. It's not glamorous at all.
No, they don't persist because every day in the lab feels joyful. They aren't riding a daily high of happiness. They persist because the ultimate goal, maybe expanding human knowledge or developing a treatment for a disease, dwarfs the disappointment of today's failed experiment.
Or take the teacher. Someone who stands before a classroom year after year, quietly shaping young minds.
Such a tough job.
It is, and society does not reward them with massive wealth or fame. The daily grind of grading papers and managing behavior isn't a constant thrill ride.
Definitely not.
But they are creating an impact that will ripple out into the world long after they retire. What the parent, the scientist, and the teacher all reveal is the fundamental mechanism of meaning.
Which is what
It demands that we give deeply of ourselves, often enduring significant friction before it ever yields a sense of fulfillment. It requires an upfront investment of sacrifice.
I have to admit, though, when I was reading through Maya and Nick's dialogue, I found myself playing devil's advocate right alongside Maya.
She pushes back hard on this.
She does.
Yeah.
She essentially asks, isn't meaning just a massive rationalization? Isn't it just cognitive dissonance like, well, I'm miserable and exhausted, but hey, I have to tell myself it's for a higher purpose so I don't lose my mind.
Right, yeah.
It sounds a bit like a consolation prize we hand ourselves when we fail to be happy.
And that skepticism is vital. It's a very sharp critique. But the flaw in Maya's initial argument, which Nick points out, is that she is treating meaning as if it were just another emotion on the spectrum.
Like it's just a substitute feeling we deploy when joy isn't available.
Exactly. But meaning isn't an emotion. Meaning is an architectural framework.
A framework, okay, let's break that down.
Think of it as the foundational structure that organizes your experiences. It gives context to your suffering and direction to your effort. The data shows us that the happiest life is not always the most meaningful.
Interesting.
Right. A person could live a life of pure leisure, completely insulated from stress, having all their desires met instantly, and report high levels of daily happiness. But they could feel utterly hollow because their life lacks weight or consequence.
Wow, yes.
Conversely, the most meaningful life is rarely the happiest. Look at the people who have driven major civil rights movements or whistleblowers who risk everything to expose corruption.
Yeah, their lives are incredibly difficult.
They endure immense stress, persecution, and sorrow. They are often profoundly unhappy in the moment, but because they possess that framework of meaning, their suffering is not random. It becomes a load-bearing pillar in a larger story.
Okay, so if meaning is this vital framework that takes the random suffering of life and organizes it into something bearable, how do we actually get it?
That's the big question.
Yeah, like where do the blueprints for this framework come from? Are we born with a predefined purpose encoded in our DNA, or is it something entirely constructed?
Well, to understand the origin of meaning, we have to look at the psychoneuroimmunological reality of what happens to the human body when purpose is stripped away.
That's a mouthful.
It is.
Yeah.
But basically, the brain's response to meaning is not just psychological, it is intensely biological. When humans feel they are part of a narrative larger than themselves, their resilience skyrockets.
So the pain remains,
Yeah,
but the suffering becomes tolerable.
yes. And the most extreme and powerful evidence we have for this comes from the observations of Viktor Frankl.
Yes, Viktor Frankl's work is absolutely pivotal here.
Right.
For those listening who might not be familiar, Frankl was a brilliant psychiatrist who survived the unimaginable horrors of the Holocaust.
Right.
While enduring the absolute worst conditions in concentration camps, he observed human survival not just as a doctor, but as a fellow prisoner. He realized that survival wasn't purely based on physical strength.
He witnessed a direct causal link between psychological purpose and physiological survival.
Which is incredible.
It really is. Frankl noted that the prisoners who found a way to attach meaning to their suffering, whether it was the burning hope of reuniting with a spouse, or an unfinished manuscript they felt compelled to write, or even just maintaining their internal dignity in the face of absolute evil, those individuals were far more likely to survive.
Wow.
When a person lost their sense of meaning, their immune system would physically compromise. Their stress hormones would overwhelm them, and their body would quickly follow their mind into collapse. The biological machinery requires a why to endure the how.
But the wild thing is, the why was different for everyone.
Exactly.
Frankl's why was his work and his wife. Someone else's was their faith, which proves that we aren't born with a biological instruction manual that dictates what our specific purpose is.
What's fascinating here is that Frankl's observations map perfectly onto what anthropologists call the blank slate in terms of human purpose.
The blank slate.
Right. Our biology dictates the overwhelming need for meaning, but our culture and environment supply the content. It's like a smartphone.
Oh, I like this analogy.
Yeah, human nature provides the hardware that desperately requires an operating system to function, but your culture, your family, and your life experiences install the specific apps.
Right. So a person raised in a highly collectivist culture might have the community service app installed, finding ultimate meaning in sacrificing their individual desires for the good of the group.
Yes.
But someone raised in a deeply individualistic environment might have the self-actualization app installed, finding meaning in pushing the boundaries of art or personal discovery. The content varies wildly.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it explains why belief systems, philosophies, and religions have been the cornerstone of human civilization.
They supply the apps.
They supply a cosmic narrative. They offer a ready-made architectural blueprint that takes the chaotic, unpredictable, often agonizing experience of human life and orders it into a structure that makes sense.
But the dialogue between Nick and Maya pushes past just inheriting a belief system.
Right. They take it a step further.
They argue that in the modern world, meaning isn't just something you passively download from your culture. It is something you must actively forge through your own choices and actions.
Which is incredibly empowering, but also kind of terrifying.
Yeah, it means you can't just sit on the couch and wait for Amazon to deliver a box of meaning to your doorstep.
Yeah.
You have to build it with your own hands.
You do.
But if meaning is something we actively create through our choices, how does it survive us? Because no matter how great the framework is that we build, our biological lives are still incredibly short. If the meaning just exists in our own heads, doesn't it die when we do?
This is exactly where the concept of legacy enters the equation.
Lazy, right?
Why do civilizations manage to endure across centuries? It is certainly not because every generation lives perfectly frictionless, happy lives. Civilizations endure because humanity has this unique capacity to pass the baton.
To give to the next generation.
Right. Each generation actively chooses to contribute something to the next, often at great cost to themselves.
They plant trees under whose shade they do not expect to sit.
Precisely the mechanism at work. They contribute medical advancements, they refine systems of justice, they compose symphonies, they build infrastructure.
It's compounding interest, basically.
Yes. Every meaningful contribution, whether it is a cure for a disease or simply raising a compassionate child, becomes a structural gift to people the giver will never meet. The meaning outlives the biological organism.
That is the real beauty of the human design. Our actual impact extends far beyond our heartbeat. And Nick and Maya make this stunning point that meaning lives in the longest echoes of the smallest actions.
I love that phrase, the longest echoes.
Yeah. You don't have to be the person who cures a disease or builds a monument to have a meaningful life. The architecture can be built from smaller bricks.
Absolutely.
It can be a single conversation that completely alters the trajectory of a struggling teenager's life. It can be a quiet act of integrity that someone else witnesses and uses as a compass for their own behavior years later.
And this raises an important question about how we evaluate the success of our own lives. Society constantly pushes us to optimize for immediate pleasure and comfort.
Constantly.
But when the final chapter of a life is written, no one remembers the baseline comfort level. When a person is eulogized, no one stands up and talks about how many relaxing, low-stress afternoons they managed to accumulate on the couch.
Exactly. You never hear a eulogy that says, she was truly incredible, she had an unprecedented run of perfectly pleasant, slightly bored Tuesdays.
No, they don't recount our resume of comfortable moments. They recount our virtues. What did we stand for when it was difficult? Who did we protect? What did we create? And what did we leave behind for others to use?
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, right now, wherever you are in your day? Maya poses this brilliant challenge at the end of the source dialogue, and I want to pose it directly to you.
It's a great challenge.
If your life became a story that someone else picked up and read 100 years from now, what would they learn about what truly mattered to you? Would the story just be about a character who spent 80 years chasing fleeting moments of good weather? Or would it be a story about someone who endured the storms to build something that lasted?
It radically reframes how we should approach our daily decisions. Before asking yourself the culturally programmed question, am I happy right now? The more foundational, structurally sound question is, am I contributing to a meaning that will endure this momentary discomfort?
Right.
Because as Nick eloquently concludes in the text, happiness is merely a visitor. It knocks, it rests in your living room, and eventually the neurochemistry fades and it leaves. But meaning is what remains when the house is empty.
Happiness is a visitor and meaning is a home. I love that. It perfectly captures everything we've been unpacking today.
It really does.
You cannot lock the door and force the visitor of happiness to stay. Hedonic adaptation will always reset the baseline, and weather will always change.
Yeah.
But you can spend your time laying the bricks, creating an architecture of meaning that can withstand whatever weather rolls in.
Exactly.
And if happiness is a visitor and meaning is a home, the ultimate question is, what are you building that will outlast you?
And that leads to a deeply provocative reality about our modern world. We've established the neuroscience that meaning is forged through friction, through sacrificing the present moment for a larger purpose.
Yeah.
And we know happiness is just fleeting neurochemistry. Yet, look at modern society. We are obsessed with engineering a completely frictionless life.
We really are. We want absolute convenience.
Instant delivery, immediate gratification, and the elimination of all struggle. But if meaning physically requires effort, sacrifice, and endurance, are modern obsessions with convenience actually robbing us of the very raw materials required to build a meaningful existence?
Oh, wow.
We have to ask ourselves, are we burning down our own home just to keep a temporary visitor warm?
Wow. That is something to think about. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the things that seem obvious. Keep looking for the deeper architecture in your life. And above all, keep learning. We'll catch you next time.